Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty at Haggerty10 Twitter handle. You know that off by heart by now, or you should. And I'm joined today by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW, Sean's Twitter handle, which you also know off by heart. Good morning, Sean. How you doing?
Not bad, Tony. Aye, yourself?
Yes, all right. Just to say it's Thursday, February the 9th.
I think I'm matching the wall behind you here.
I think you are, yes. Just as well you're not sitting here. Yeah, but there you have it. Now, before we go on to talk about Celtic, a few things happening, but we'll do the housekeeping first, Sean, won't we? And we'll say thank you to SENECA Medical Group. SENECA. The Celtic Way Morning Briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group, and SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out a lot more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. And we say thank you to them, Sean. Now, Sean, he's gone. The transfer tale that became a saga, that became everything else. Giorgos Giakoumakis finally signed for Atlanta United last night in the MLS, and he posted up that he loved the Celtic supporters because they loved him, and he was sad to go, yada, yada, yada. But he's finally gone, and he is, as the manager said, finally off the radar.
Aye, he is. That message was actually it was a really nice message. I did laugh, though, that it came out on his Instagram right enough, as Ange Postecoglou said it would, before it actually got confirmed by either club. I had a wee chuckle at that, but his actual message, he kind of said, he said, difficult times arrived. It was an incredible journey. He said he loved and was loved by the incomparable, amazing Celtic fans, and he thanked them all and says they'll be forever in his heart. So it was a really nice message, to be fair to him. It was a nice, classic and a parting gesture. Posted up alongside a video of his time at Celtic, I think, as well. So I know the way that he's handled it behind the scenes, maybe we don't know. But in terms of the way that he's handled the actual moment of his departure, I think he did well.
And before I get into trouble from the boss man, I was a wee bit derelict in my duty there, Sean. I forgot to read the strap line at the bottom. You know what I'm going to say, guys. Subscribe to the Celtic Way website for only £2 for 2 months for unlimited access to everything that's written on the site. And you can help us continue to produce top quality Celtic content covering our club like no other. Hit that button, subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. We thank everybody that's done it. And if you're planning on doing it, just do it. Hit the button. You know what to do. Now, yes, Giorgos Giakoumakis. So I think the Celtic supporters, Sean, loved the big guy. He was right. He was loved, and he loved them back in return. And I think a lot of Celtic supporters will be sad to see him go. You know, I written extensively about what I thought would happen. It didn't come to fruition. And there's part of me still thinks that it could have been solved, but he's gone now, so you have to move on. Onwards and upwards. O's in the building now, so let's see what he brings to the table. But in terms of a legacy, Sean, he leaves with a good feeling amongst the Celtic supporters for his contribution last season and helping Celtic win the league and League Cup double, and coming in when Kyogo got injured and playing a huge part in that title win. I'm thinking the hat-trick against Dundee, the comments after that, all that kind of thing that riled up certain people, but he just seemed to be a big guy who took it on his shoulders, the responsibility, and backed it up with the goals and performances.
He did that. Sons of Scotland comes in saying, no Giakoumakis, no title last season. Good luck to the big man. Shame he had to go, but the wagon rolls on. And I think that the first 6 words of that, 7 words of that, are where I come down on it. I think that he was front and centre during the title run-in last season. And I've said this before, but it was in a way that was almost unquantifiable, even though he does the most quantifiable thing on a football park, which is put the ball in the back of the net. The reason I say it's unquantifiable is because he made it so that Kyogo Furuhashi wasn't really missed during that run-in all that much when you think about it, which I think is absolutely a testament to him and the way that he embraced, once he got fit and once he got to run the team, the way that he embraced that role. It's not for everybody, to be honest, Tony. You can, and you know, I like my stats, and I do think that when you look at his player profile, he is replaceable in that sense. But there's also intangibles when it comes to playing for Celtic, especially playing as a Celtic striker, about the expectation, about the pressure that some players just can't rise to. He rose to it. He liked it. He thrived on it. So I suppose the ball's in O's court now as to whether he can grow into that or not. But in terms of Giakoumakis himself, that's what he'll be remembered for, I reckon. The pivotal role that he played in that title win last season, rather than the way that it ended. A good player, a good finisher, a key role in a memorable title. Ultimately, a wee bit of a cult hero. No more, no less. That's the way that I would characterise it.
Yeah, I would go along with that, Sean, as well. I was trying to flick the Rolodex. You got a favourite goal, Sean, of his, the one that you liked, or one that stands out for you?
Favourite goal? Probably it's not the most flamboyant, but the Dundee United title clincher, I suppose, is the first one that comes to mind, just because it clinched the title. But the overhead kick, maybe.
Yeah.
Aye.
He had a couple of them, didn't he?
Aye. What
To be
about you?
fair, for a big guy, I was trying to think as well. His header against Dundee, that hat-trick header, I was really impressed by that. Because he came up trumps. I think there was about 3 or 4 minutes to go in that one, wasn't it? And it was a huge goal for Celtic at the time. I just, he produced some big moments. He also scored in the Champions League against Shakhtar. So he leaves with packing a lot of experience in his short time at the club. And there's not many players that leave after such a short time and they go with the good faith and the goodwill of the Celtic supporters. And I think a lot of people like yourself feel that, he was a bit of a cult hero and he did the job when required. And he was a good striker, not a great striker, but a good striker. And they'll be sad. They'll miss that output. I think he was an old-fashioned centre forward, wasn't he? His dad used to rummel them up at the back, that kind of thing, and get in about them and stuff like that. So 420 somewhere, tear in my eyes, I sip my coffee from my GG cup. True story. Oh wow, it affects people in different ways, Sean. Morning lads, Scott McGill, gutted to see Giorgos Giakoumakis go. Thought he'd more to give, and I thought so too. And I'm sad to see him go, but you can't dwell on it, Sean. You have to move on. And we have GG's overhead kick goal against Mother was a highlight for me. Yeah, that was a brilliant goal as well. So, overhead kick. Lots of people saying the overhead kick, Sean, the spectacular. Yeah.
Jason Lee, I know it wasn't a goal, but I agree with Jason Lee when he started in the derby February 2nd last year. He did put in a hell of a performance. I agree with that.
He did everything bar score that night, didn't he? He did a header in particular that was brilliantly saved by McGregor. Derek Crawford asking me if I'm okay. Yep, I'm fine. I'm good. You accept that players come and go. It's part of it, yeah.
Jason Lee comes in saying Giakoumakis was excellent for Celtic, but he was never going to replace Kyogo as number one striker. Is that what it comes down to for you, Tony?
Yeah, he never was he? I think you and I have spoken about that extensively, that in all the big games, Kyogo got the nod, didn't he?
Yeah, if he was fit, if he was fit, he did. There was no doubt.
So, yeah, and I think that's also maybe what helped sway it in terms of Giakoumakis exiting the building. Giorgos Giakoumakis didn't get fit until the winter break, did well in Kyogo's absence. Andrew Galea. Yep, I don't think anybody... I said before, it was a memorable title win and he played his part in that and he'll be fondly remembered for that, Sean.
That's where it comes back to me as a cult hero, that kind of thing. Not necessarily here long enough to advance beyond that status, maybe not even the game time to advance beyond that status, but he'll certainly be remembered in that regard. And it was a memorable title last year. It was all right, at some stage it became expected, but at the beginning of the season, given what Ange Postecoglou inherited, it was an unexpected title. So to actually win it in that manner, losing your star striker to injury in two significant spells, one that Giakoumakis was fit for, one he wasn't, but that run-in one where he was fit, he totally took that mantle over. He was brilliant.
Yeah, you can't deny that he was brilliant in that particular period.
Statistically, Tony. Statistically, Tony, right? And this is where you see a lot of differentiation with people depending on what way they want to paint it. So I'll just give you it straight down the middle, right? You know how I like to convert the minutes played into actual full 90 so that it gives you more of an accurate thing, because a lot of his appearances were as a sub and different things, and I see a lot of people throwing out that X amount of goals and X amount of starts. That's only relevant if he scored all those goals in those starts to me. So 26 goals in 58 games in total, right? But it was just over 2,700 minutes played, so that's about 30 full 90s. So 26 goals and 30 full 90s when you think about the actual time he spent on the park is no mean feat, Tony. It's good. It's very good.
That's prolific, isn't it?
If you want to split it into the actual goals that he got in starts, he started 22 times and scored 19 goals. So again, brilliant. Really, really good when he did start. Unfortunately, obviously for him, 36 sub-appearances. Yeah. So most of his appearances were from the bench. He got 7 goals in those appearances, which when you think of the minutes that he played, is actually not bad as well. So overall, it just feeds into that. When he played, he did tend to score. He was a good player for Celtic in that regard. He scored, he took the mantle of being a Celtic striker in that sense. I've got the XGs and stuff. I know you're not interested, but he performed about as expected from the chances that he got. But overall, simply put, he scored goals when he was on the park, is the way that you could sum it up for everything I said.
Yeah, indeed. And as Greg Taylor would say that is prolific, isn't it? And as I was fond of writing in any piece I did in Giakoumakis, feed the Greek and he will score. And he did. So I think those stats back that up. And yeah, I mean that's quite startling, that statistically, isn't it? To be fair, you know, they're good numbers.
No, definitely. I mean, I've got the. I suppose the next question is, where does it leave you? But he's already not been involved in the squad for about 4 or 5 games now, so you've got a glimpse of where it leaves you, and it leaves you with filling that substitute striker void at the moment. Obviously, as time goes on, you're hoping he'll properly challenge Kyogo for game time, but as it stands, that's what it is. I've got the old depth chart, Tony, that says I would wait until Giakoumakis left. But Tony, to me, that makes good reading. I don't know. I mean, when you look at two players per position is what you're kind of aiming for a lot of the time. You've pretty much got that just now. You could make an argument a couple of players maybe of the requisite quality, that kind of thing. Maybe Stephen Welsh, I'm looking at when I'm saying that. Siegrist and Bain as the backups to Hart in general. But overall, to me, it's good reading.
Yeah, I like that depth chart, to be fair. I'm on board with that. I think there's real quality there, isn't there? And the ones in yellow that you highlight there, arguably, or well, maybe with Moy,
the
favoured starting 11. You know, everybody will be different in their thinking, but you know, I look at that. There's some real quality there, isn't there? Let's be honest.
The one name that stands out is probably James McCarthy, really, isn't it? It's in terms of not really in any chance of getting a game time without a major injury crisis. The rest of the guys there, including Stephen Welsh, could get some game time. Maybe excluding Scott Bain as well, but as you suggest, on Tuesday, goalkeepers are kind of odd position when you come to consider game time. So, but and a lot of this, and I said this when I kind of wrote about the transfer window in general, a lot of this, the perception of Celtic's January transfer window will come from the players they lose compared to the players that come in, but more so how the players come in adapt and how quickly they adapt. But for me, that in a vacuum, looking at it, try to look at it objectively, I think they still look in great shape. It's streamlined in a way, but it's still just as strong. I don't necessarily think they've weakened, and I know that's taking a leap that will be able to fill that Giakoumakis gap that maybe right now you can't say with certainty. But so far, Alistair Johnston's done well. So the Juranovic thing, I mean, doesn't look as if he's been missed so far, and you've got months to come before he needs to be at a Champions League level. And I know your opinion was that Juranovic didn't scale to the Champions League well enough. Nope. So in that respect, Johnston's not got maybe quite as maybe quite as big a gap to bridge before that's complete. But what do you think, Tony? Is there any, apart from McCarthy and Bain, is there anything in there you're thinking, wish he went, or he's got to go, that kind of thing?
No, I'm more erring on the positive side, Sean. I'm looking at the likes of Haksabanovic and Abada, Turnbull. You know, they've all got valid contributions to make moving forward, and we're interested to see how Haksabanovic would look if he gets a serious run of games. Celtic fans want to see more of Haksabanovic. I've liked the look of O. Too early to make any kind of snap judgments on him, but I think there's the makings of a footballer there, and a very good footballer there from the small sample size that we've seen. You could swap O'Reilly for Moy there at the minute, but that's interchangeable, right? Iwata, again, small sample size, but seems to be that he can make a contribution, and we've spoken about this before, that I think that's more of an eye on the Champions League next season.
Yep.
With the two sitters, as you say. We've spoken about that. So, yep, Barnaby's did okay. He's blown hot and cold when he's come in for Taylor. But I think
that's a couple of people here, Tony, have says that's their problem position, is that don't think Alexandro Bernabei's ready if Taylor was to get injured. Derek Crawford, my big concern, Sean, is at left back if Taylor gets injured again. I still think there's the raw tools there with Bernabei. I think he's still settling. I don't disagree that if Greg Taylor was to be out for like maybe a couple of months, that it really would be into the fire for Bernabei, and he would need to produce it. But I do think there's still the raw tools there, Tony.
Yeah, I also think as well that I don't think the manager would be averse to putting Kobayashi at left back should anything happen to Taylor, because he's naturally left-sided. If he didn't trust Bernabei, because he seems to favour Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt as his central defensive partnership, doesn't he?
Yeah, at the moment,
At the moment, I'm talking about. So if anything were to happen to Taylor, and I don't think I'd have a problem with that. I mean, I know Kobayashi's primarily a centre-back, but if he's an actual left-sided player, then that wouldn't be a square peg in a round hole, if you get what I mean.
I mean, it depends how he would adapt to coming into the midfield. And I know he's good with the ball at his feet, and that's partly why he's left-sided, left centre-back, ball playing, all that. It's still quite different going to left-back and then having to come in and do the inverted stuff. So it would be how he could do that, I suppose. But I think he would be more, and I would like to see him, if say the worst happened and Greg Taylor does get injured, I would want to see Bernabei get the running the team and try and play his way into it.
Yeah, so would I, but I was just in case of talking about that the manager maybe doesn't trust him. But Derek Crawford saying Bernabei's not good enough, Bernabei's not very good as of yet, says Jason Lee. Well,
Andrew Galea, more measured, he says he's doing okay, he is talented, obviously scope for improvement there. And I'm going to put up another Andrew comment, which is my big takeaway for this actually is Andrew's comment: in that squad there are players who can fill in other positions if required, lots of flexibility. And I think that's absolutely key, because although I've obviously putting this together, you kind of need to pick a position. It just gets muddled if you start putting them all over the place. You can do it, but it's not sleek looking, so I don't do it. And ultimately, when you're on the pitch, you can only play the one position. So, for instance, up front there, you've Kyogo and O. Pretty much they will only play through the middle, but everyone, apart from maybe Abada, he doesn't really play left. But the other wingers, Jota can play both, Maida can play both, Haksabanovic can play both, Forrest can play both. There's a lot of flexibility up front. In midfield, Iwata is primarily really to play in that deep role, but he could move further forward if he wanted to. He can also move further back. McGregor can move about there. Hatate can switch either the left 8 or the right 8. O'Reilly's already played deeper. Moy, I said at the time he was brought in, he would replace everybody and nobody because he can play all three. He's obviously been playing primarily better as an 8, but again he can switch about there. And then at the back, I mean, right, okay, it's specialist positions in terms of Johnston being a right back. He has played centre back, Tony, in a back three. I don't necessarily think that will happen. But ultimately, there's a lot of depth there in terms of even being able to cover it. All right, nobody can actually cover Cameron Carter-Vickers getting injured. But beyond that, you've got Kobayashi in to compete with Starfelt. Welsh will be floating about as backup to all of them, I would imagine. And then, all right, the left back we've discussed. But there is a lot of flexibility, and that as much as anything, is what makes me think that is good reading.
Yeah, I mean, and look at all of that with the exception of McCarthy. Everybody's fit, aren't they? And
McCarthy's back in training. He's just not going to get in the squad, I think.
Okay. So everybody's fit, isn't it? Coming to the business end of the season, which the manager touched upon, and that to me gives the manager a wonderful headache. It's his job to pick a starting 11 from that, but lots of depth, lots of flexibility there, as we've spoken about, and just the fact that everybody's fit, busting to go and raring to go, and wanting to be part of, a treble chasing team, Sean, which is great. Yep. Training must be brilliant.
Peter Grant says that to you, didn't he?
The battlefield.
Right, must be a battlefield trying to jostle for selection.
I'd like to be part of that someday and just have a good look at that. But now you touched upon it there, and you were talking about Cameron Carter-Vickers, which is a nice segue into I spoke to Alan Stubbs about Cameron Carter-Vickers, and he spoke at length about him. He said some wonderful stuff. Now, he mentioned another player, Virgil van Dijk, and before everybody jumps on any kind of bandwagon, he's not comparing him to Virgil van Dijk. He's comparing the way that Cameron Carter-Vickers has adapted to Scottish football.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that Virgil van Dijk did. He tore it up for 2 years, and he says he sees similar traits in Cameron Carter-Vickers, that he's tearing it up and he's looking every inch that an accomplished defender, Sean. And I know we laugh, I call him Cameron Carter-Vickers 8/9, but he does look very, very comfortable. And Stubbs was saying the last time he saw a defender look as comfortable as Carter-Vickers was when Van Dijk was there.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Are you on board with that?
I do agree with it. I think I'm going to put up a comment here from Pete McGee just to address it for you first, Tony. Let's not waste time debating Cameron Carter-Vickers versus Virgil van Dijk. As much as he rates CCV, Pete McGee says Virgil was different class, possibly the best centre-back in the world on his day. Now, to that, I won't actually respond myself. I'll put Plunge McNuggets' comment up. Van Dijk wasn't world-class at Celtic, and I think that's accurate. He wasn't world-class at Celtic, but he's absolutely strolled it up here. And that is the comparison, not necessarily a direct who's better at this, who's better at that, but the manner in which they have both adapted to Scottish football and the manner in which they make it seem, I mean, I've used it in the headline, it's an effortless invincibility almost. The two of them just do not seem to be perturbed by anything that Scottish football could throw at them. And that's the kind of comparison that Alan Stubbs was making, wasn't it?
That was a salient point I was trying to make. It wasn't a comparison of the two players. It was a comparison of how the two of them have adapted to Scottish football and how they have strolled it. He was saying that they've made defending, the art of defending, look easy in Scottish football when everybody knows it's not. And he spoke about the art of defending, and there's an art and how not to defend, Sean, which he also spoke about, didn't he? And then and the reason I did it was the statistic that you gave the other day, and you put it out on Twitter about he's not lost a headed duel since Christmas Eve. Is that right?
There's lost one. I lost one.
Lost one.
Just one since Christmas Eve. And even that, as someone on Twitter pointed out, when you actually look at that one that Kyle Vassell beat him, it was kind of off balance as well. So it was almost like, well, that's the only reason he won it. But one aerial duel lost since Christmas Eve in the league. So on
the back of that I wanted to speak to another accomplished Celtic defender on his thoughts about Cameron Carter-Vickers, and he gave me his thoughts, and I thought he spoke really, really well about him, Sean, to be fair.
He did. I think it was good value, Tony, in my opinion. Interesting what he focused on as well, which was as much as we were saying that, and he obviously liked that stat. He could tell he really, really liked that stat, but he never necessarily focused on the aerial prowess and specifics. It was more so the kind of minutiae of what you can't measure. So, for instance, he used the fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers won 8 out of 8 aerial duels in the most recent Glasgow derby, right? But he pointed out that what made that impressive, rather than just he won 8 out of 8, was the context of, for instance, dealing with Alfredo Morelos, who Stubbs kind of pointed out is one of those that, rather than necessarily wanting to beat you to the ball aerially, he'll nudge you, he'll lean into you, he'll try and put you off, he'll disrupt you, he'll be aggressive. And a lot of players in Scotland will do that. So in that context, he was clearly really impressed that Carter-Vickers still manages to win so many with his timing, with his spring, which, I mean, I know he's 6 foot, right, which is still tall, obviously, but it's about average, just under average for a centre-back, which I think average height is about 6'1", which I think we've talked about before. It doesn't matter if you've got the timing and the intelligence, and Stubbs goes into quite a bit of detail about that aspect of it, about the timing, and it's not a coincidence that he's in the positions that he's in and all of that kind of stuff. And naturally, that brought him round to mentioning him in the same breath as Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, and that's what impresses me, Shauna. That's what I liked about that article you spoke about there. That it's that minutiae that Stubbs has been there. He's been that defender, very same, and appeared in that movie, and he's telling you that these are things that interest me. Now, as you say, you can focus about he won 8 out of 8 headers. That means he's great in the air, but he's telling you that there's guys pushing you, shoving you in your face, annoying you. Morelos is that type, to use that game alone. So I'm interested in that, because you're hearing it from somebody who put that jersey on and did the exact same things and played alongside another defender who I loved, Mark Reaper. And Stubbs before said that Matt Reaper turned him into a player like that, you know. So when Stubbs makes that comparison per se, or he notices like he's playing similar to the way Van Dijk played in Scottish football, then you have to listen to that, don't you?
I think so, and Scott McGill comes in with a good point here, saying a lot of players come from the English Premier League to Scotland and find our game difficult. Cameron Carter-Vickers has done the complete opposite, seems to stroll it every week. For me, it's always come back to, like, first of all, just because you play in the English Premier League does not mean you're necessarily a better player a lot of the time, although sometimes it does, admittedly. But if you make it to the English Premier League, you obviously have something. But coming up here, and Scott's right, you've seen it plenty of times, whether it's somebody that's a wee bit older or even somebody that's highly rated and it's a loan deal or whatever, that can't quite seem to adapt, whether it's the pace of the play, the physicality, whatever it is. A lot of it, to me, comes down to attitude. Comes down to the attitude that you show when you come up here. And from day one, his attitude has been absolutely spot on. And that's another thing Alan Stubbs said about him.
Yeah. And he also said this as well. Antonius Varias saying, for me, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Callum McGregor are the two most critical players on the side. Well, that's funny you should say that, because Stubbsy also said they were the two names on the team sheet, Sean, every week, aren't they? First two names on the team sheet. So he covered a lot of bases. I would urge you to go and read it, guys. It's a cracking read.
Comments,
yeah, you know, it's the way other players talk about CCV and the league tells its own story. Says Derek Crawford. Yeah, you know, and very.
I was going to say, guys are saying big Cameron carpet slippers, strolls games, smoking a pipe and a quilted jacket.
I've got an image of Troy Hawk, you know, the Greeters Guild, with the furful kind of jacket. Cameron Carter-Vickers is standing at the back of the Celtic pack. But I think to the naked eye, everybody's been impressed, you say, with his attitude. It's been spot on. But just his all-round performances, they've been commanding. And it has looked effortless, and it's certainly not. You know, but he's achieved a lot since he came here, Sean. You know, he's won the league. In the League Cup, he scored the winner in a derby match. You know, he's regained his place in the USA men's national team setup, and he's played in a World Cup finals match. And that's all on his Celtic forum, as you say, his attitude and application since he came north of the border. Because remember, he had 6 loan spells before he came to Celtic, Celtic being his 7th. And he's found a kind of natural, spiritual football home. He's enjoying it, and it shows. And he does. I mean, I'd hate to play against him because he's just unflappable, as I've said many times.
Peter Morrison saying he's a brilliant reader of the game. That's part of the battle, isn't it? Because you can get, I mean, not saying they're 10 a penny, but essentially they are. A big lump that can head it and kick it is, you can get them anywhere, really. Yeah. It's what Alan Stubbs is talking about is the things that sometimes you can't measure it. It's the positioning that you take up to avoid having to make a tackle, to avoid having to make a header. And I've always said that playing as a Celtic centre-back is a position of responsibility that, all right, I'm just plucking 90% out of there, right? But 90% of centre-backs will never experience that and will not know how to deal with it, because there's only a select amount of teams in the world that put that amount of responsibility on their centre-backs, where you're almost not there to defend first and foremost. You're there to help with build-up, you're there to pass, you're there to anticipate danger before it, rather than actually actively just head it away and kick it away. And I mean, I said when Maurice Jens signed, and he said that he modelled his game on Bonucci and Boateng, ball-playing defenders, that he'd never really been in a position to show it. But by God, was he going to be in the position to show it at Celtic? Because that is primarily what you're there to do. Now, we've already spoke about Jensen, whether he showed that or whether he didn't. But Cameron Carter-Vickers has come in from day one, having realistically not played that before. Not really. Not with the loan spells that he had and the types of teams that he was at, and came in and adapted to it flawlessly.
And also as well, and there's something Stubbs didn't mention, but I actually think that he's brought a bit of intimidation factor back to the Celtic defence, you know, which hasn't been seen since maybe Bobo. And he's a far better footballer than Bobo was, but you know, just for the intimidation factor alone, Sean, you wouldn't want to mess with Cameron Carter-Vickers, would you?
No. I mean, Derek came in with, I don't know if I started it, but he came in with a comment just saying, listen to how the other players speak about him, whether it's rivals or whether it's Celtic players, and that goes for the Callum McGregors as well, because as I say, no matter what kind of no matter what two players it is doing the teammates thing, every one of them, nobody has, as far as I'm happy to be proven wrong, but no one has picked anyone other than Callum McGregor when it comes to best trainer. Now, the way that Ange Postecoglou trains, presumably there are plenty of players that you could pick, but nobody has ever not picked Callum McGregor for it. And rightfully, likewise, nobody ever doesn't pick Cameron Carter-Vickers as the strongest. And then you see him getting the armband when Callum McGregor goes out. I think a lot of people, myself included, thought naturally it would go to Joe Hart because he was getting it in games and different things here and there. The fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers got it spoke to his influence, but also spoke to the way the other players look up to him on the park as well.
Yes, very much so. And the manager said that he was a different type of captain to Callum, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though he might appear on the surface to be quiet or a quieter guy on the park, but Patrick McLaughlin here saying he's like Paul Elliott and Jason Denayer rolled into
that is lofty praise, Tony, that one. Let's not forget, Jason Denayer was top notch when he was at Celtic. And obviously Paul Elliott was different class in an era that maybe wasn't full of different class players. But
Paul Elliott stood out for that very reason. And I loved Denayer. I thought Denayer was an excellent footballer as well, and a very good defender. But so that, to go back to Pete McGee's original comment, I hope you don't think that's a waste of time, Pete McGee, but that's why we did it. There's always method behind why we do stuff. It wasn't a he's better than him type thing or a comparison. It was, there was method to it. So I hope
just to point out
that more enlightened in that.
We've done this a couple of times, Tony, where it's not necessarily always someone versus somebody else or anything, but we can give our own opinion, we can back it with data, we can say this, we can say that, we can quote Ange, but sometimes, and we've done this a couple of times now, it's good to get an opinion of someone who's been in a similar position. So for instance, Paul Lambert on Real Hatate, so it was what a Champions League winner, what a former Celtic captain who played in midfield and adapted to the Champions League level and all that sees when he looks at Real Hatate's game, which is something different from what we're going to see. And this is a similar thing here. What a title winning, remember he won everything up with Celtic, Alan Stubbs. What a title winning Celtic defender who had to adapt coming up here to this game sees when he looks at Cameron Carter-Vickers playing. And he just naturally ended up drawing a comparison with Virgil van Dijk. That's the way that it went.
And it's the minutiae detail that we spoke about that I love, and the fact that they're telling you, because they're enlightening you and they're expanding your knowledge. He's saying the piece on the site this morning explains it better, Tony. Yeah, correct. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you want to. That's
always going to be the case. Where's because two guys better at the written word than the video stuff, so it's no surprise it's better explained on the site.
But you know what I mean. It's these things are interesting. I think when you hear other Celtic players or former Celtic players talking about present Celtic players and what they see, and that's the reason we do these kind of things. And I say thank you to Alan Stubbs for giving me his time. He's a cracking big guy, and he's delighted that Sean Dyche is now in the fold, and he's hoping that he can steal them away from relegate. Big Evertonian, like huge Evertonian. So he's fingers crossed that has a successful outcome for them. And Cameron Carter-Vickers is a better defender than Van Dijk and more committed to Celtic, says Plunge McNugget. Controversial, Sean?
Maybe, but the commitment thing's maybe a good point, because
the commitment thing, I'll give that.
He arrived at Celtic under vastly different circumstances in terms of couldn't really find a home down south, punted out on loan 6-7 times, came through the ranks at Spurs, but only ever really get played when they were rotating for the Europa League games or that kind of thing. And he said himself when he signed for Celtic, now there would have been other interest because he was obviously highly rated down south when he was younger, but he said when he signed for Celtic that a big part of it was having found somewhere to put down roots, a home, that kind of thing. So I don't think that Plunge McNugget's been flippant. I do think there is an element of the commitment being there with Cameron Carter-Vickers, and I think Van Dijk was always kind of destined to go down south. But I mean, we'll see how it plays out. He's also a wee bit older. Got to remember, 24, 25. So
Derek Crawford comes in and says, "Not a dig, guys. Sorry, we just means a good." Listen, we don't take it as a dig. You see, we put up all sorts of comments from you guys who are good enough to comment, so we're not afraid to put up ones that even if they were digs, we'll address them. But no, Derek, it's all good.
I'm
all
going to
friends.
put up just quickly, Tony. Derek had asked as well, do we know anything about Atlanta United? Will Giakoumakis be first choice there, Sean? He's a designated player contract, so he'll be played. He will be played. He'll have a good life over there, a good league to go in, good league he'll probably thrive in it. And of the MLS fan bases, Atlanta United's are right up there. But obviously, being hell of a biased on this show, we obviously see it as a step down in terms of basically everything. But good luck to him, and he will be first choice, Derek.
Kaiser, can we swear, Tony? No, that's a total negative.
Well, you can swear in the comments. We just can't put the comments up. But...
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry, just to put that in 420, saying Sean, any ideas when those A3 prints of Callum McGregor are getting sent out? I think it's in about a week's time. We were aiming for mid-February, so we're aiming for the 16th. I think is what the date was. But I'll certainly ask Frankie to confirm it. But don't fret.
Now Celtic play St Mirren in the Scottish Cup on Saturday evening, Sean, 5:30 kickoff. We'll preview that in depth tomorrow, yeah?
Yep.
And we'll
usual
try
predictions, preview, selection, quandaries, all the rest of it.
As that depth chart's getting in to go by, then the selections or the 11s will be fun, and I encourage you guys to do it. We do it every game, so encourage you guys to put your own team in the comments when we address that tomorrow or whenever. I think tomorrow we'll address that, eh?
Yep, I don't see why not. I think that'll be the main thrust of it tomorrow. The three of us, I think Aidan's back on as well. So
Aidan back tomorrow.
Shaft to give his prediction.
And speaking of Shaft, Kaiser says Giorgos Giakoumakis well done and Ella. Peter Shaft for his cheek for asking for games. There you go. Derek Crawford comes back in. Brilliant, boys. Have a fantastic Thursday, everyone. Thanks for that, Derek.
Before we wrap up, Tony, I'd favourited this one, which we're not going to go into depth about because we kind of spoke about it, but I'm going to link it up. Andrew Galea says, do we let Aaron Moy play out his contract or do Celtic give him an extension now? Now, we kind of touched on that the other day, but Aidan wrote a newsletter that addresses it, so I'm going to put the link to that in, Andrew, and you can get that a wee read and see what you think of Aidan's assessment of it, and then come back tomorrow and give him pelters.
I like giving young Aidan pelters, especially when he's not here to defend himself. It's all good, Aidan, if you're watching. Top man, speak to you soon. Now, that's I think that's our wrap for today, isn't it, Sean? Do you reckon that's a good way to end it?
I think that's plenty.
We enjoyed that,
we were talking about Still game the other day. That's plenty.
That's leave them wanting more, all that kind of stuff. They just direct you to the ticker tape running along the bottom. Subscribe to the Celtic Way. It'll cost you. What will it cost you again? I'm trying to remember. £2 for 2 months. Yes, that's the deal that we've currently got. It changes all the time. £2 for 2 months, covering a club like no other. You know that we try and produce top quality Celtic content.
You say it changes all the time, Tony. It changes tomorrow, and let me just say what a deal it's going to be tomorrow. What an offer!
Yeah, new subscribers or just we're faithful subscribers. You want to be in this tomorrow, don't you, Sean?
Aye, I mean, if you don't subscribe, you'll probably want to subscribe tomorrow for this. But if you are an existing subscriber, you're still going to you'll still have a chance anyway. So it'll suit everybody to get involved.
Indeed, we'll explain more tomorrow. But click of a button, guys, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Thanks, guys, for your comments. We do love it. We enjoy the interaction. We say it all the time. We've built a wonderful community on the Celtic Way morning briefing, and it's a privilege and an honour to do this and speak to you every day, and we can't do it without you. We love
Andrew, that's the aim. Not just for you to sit and listen to us to rabbit on, but to get involved, for you to have your wee chats, and we'll drag things up onto the screen when you do and all that kind of thing. So good that you enjoy it.
And and it thrills us and delights us that you enjoy it, to be fair. And have a fantastic Thursday. We'll see you on Friday. Yep. But before we go, just direct you to our sponsors. Celtic Way Morning Briefing, now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. And SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of the video. So we say thank you to them. Cheers, guys. See you tomorrow. We'll try and pick an 11. Be Ange Postecoglou for the day. Oh dear, can only go one way.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.